The global narrative is collapsing when it comes to the public health guidelines. This one is about the face nappies or face coverings. Well, flip-flopping continues inside the establishment. Now they've changed their mind because researchers come out again. It's not the first time they've been disproven their original claims. You remember these pictures? People sitting in their own cars without being near anybody, just driving inside the car, wearing a face nappy, just because they were scared, thanks to the establishment during the lockdown, mostly post-lockdown actually. But now we have a new study that not only, obviously we already have shown the studies that showed that they were not effective at all, but this one is actually quite concerning because it's about the toxicity of these masks. It's very extremely concerning now. So the study by the National Institutes of Health has now found that the disposable masks can release 8 times the recommended safety limit of toxic volatile organic compounds, or TVOCs. Exposures to these chemicals has been linked to health issues like headaches and nausea, but of course long-term exposure may be linked to organ damage or even cancer. So one of the problems we've had is that they told us not only these things are extremely effective and you have to keep wearing it until you take your jab and everything else, but they didn't tell us what they already knew. This isn't anything new. These things have been around for decades, and they say especially if you wear it more than 30 minutes, then you're going to be exposed to this chemical, the toxic chemical, that could actually have long-term consequences, short-term obviously, but also long-term. Now, there are 2 different types of course, when it comes to, well, 2 obvious types of masks, but in terms of the cloths and of course the disposable ones, the cheap ones. So you got the A1 to B3, these are the disposable ones, and you got the C1 to E4, the cloth ones. So they're not, the latter, they're not effective in terms of keeping you safe or helping you not spread the virus. But the A1 to B3, you can see on the left hand side, that's the TVOC concentration, the limit, and it actually goes beyond the limit, which is actually generally safe for humans. And these are just the emissions that we have from each sample, each face covering sample that they've done. Now, that's more than 8 times the recommended limit. As we said, TVOCs are a large group of odorous chemicals, which many of which are released by cleaning and beauty products, burning fuel and cooking. We already know that. Sources of TVOCs in the home include aerosol sprays, you've got cleansers, you've got the disinfectants and moth repellents and air fresheners and automotive products and everything else. But all that, which includes the toxic chemicals, but limited, doesn't mean they're completely safe, because if you are surrounded by them every day and use them a lot, which no one does really, that could also cause harm in the future, long term, and genetics in the future as well. But that's generally safe because it's still covered by the regulations, health regulations. They knew that existed, so there was a limit. But the disposable masks are 8 times worse. And some people were wearing it throughout the whole day in their cars and repeatedly wearing the same mask instead of actually changing it. So the research that we're going to get in about a few decades' time, not only about the side effects, not only about the lockdown harms, but of course, now this nonsense. It's going to be very bad. Let's not forget about the flip-flopping back on in March, 12th of March 2020. We had Jenny Harris and the medical experts saying that actually face coverings could increase the risk of infection. They said they're not effective and they're probably a bad idea, and they said you could actually increase infection. They said that, right? Before the lockdown. And then they even said there, and this is now 29th of August 2020, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Jenny Harris, saying that the evidence that masks stop the spread of the virus is not very strong in either direction. So then when in the kind of middle ground, they decided to sit on the fence while promoting it, despite what they initially said for years. And then Chris Whitty, July 2021, 6th of July 2021, 3 times that Chris Whitty said that we should still wear a face covering. This is a year later. He was still advocating for it. So initially they said don't do it. Then they said we're on the fence. Then they said when everything was getting better, actually, they were saying no, you should still do it because we bought a lot of PPE from China. we need to use them. We got all these contracts. So that's what happened. And now we are getting the results of the research. And none of them is going to be facing any consequences or any basic inquiry about this. Of course, they're not going to do that. The only inquiry we have right now is into the lockdown days. And it's simply about the establishment asking the politicians, why didn't you lock us down sooner and harder? This is not really the inquiry about the consequences of the lockdown harms or anything else happen after that. Anyway, we'll keep you guys posted on this as usual. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.